Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. We have been reading from the Adi Lila chapter 10, verse 129 onwards. We shall be reading today. Ukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripatamham vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanyeshwaram Hari Om Tatsat. Verse 129. नीलाचले प्रभु सह प्रार्थना मिलन सय भक्ता गानेरा एबे करिया गणन. Now let me enumerate the devotees of Bengal who first came to see the Lord at Jagannath Puri. Verse 130. Bada Shakha Eka Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya Tanra Bhagani Pati Shri Gopinathacharya. There was Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, one of the biggest branches of the tree of the Lord, and his sister's husband Shri Gopinath Acharya. Purport: the original name of Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya was Vasudev Bhattacharya. His place of birth, which is known as Vidyanagar, is about 2.5 miles away from the Navadvip railway station or Kanpahati railway station. His father was a very much celebrated man of the name Maheshwar Visharad. It is said that Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya was the greatest logician of his time in India. At Mithila in Bihar, he became a student of great professor named Pakshadhar Mishra, who did not allow any student to note down his explanations of logic. Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya was so talented, however, that he learned the explanations by heart, and when he returned to Navadvip, he established a school for the study of logic, thus diminishing the importance of Mithila. Students from various parts of the India still come to Navadvip to study logic. According to some authoritative opinions, the celebrated logician Raghunath Shiromani was also a student of Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya. In effect, Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya became the leader of all students of logic. Although he was a grihastha, he even taught many sannyasis in the knowledge of logic. He started a school at Jagannath Puri for the study of Vedanta philosophy, of which he was a great scholar. When Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he advised the Lord to learn Vedanta philosophy from him, but later he became a student of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to understand the real meaning of Vedanta. Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya was so fortunate as to see the six-armed form of Lord Chaitanya, known as Shadbhuj. A Shadbhuj deity is still situated at one end of the Jagannath temple. Daily Sankirtan performances take place in this part of the temple. The meeting of the Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is vividly described in Madhya Lila, chapter 6. Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya wrote a book of 100 verses named Chaitanya Shatak or Sushloka Shatak. 2 other verses he wrote beginning with the words Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga and Kalan Nashtam Bhakti Yogam Nijam Yaha are very famous among Gaudiya Vaishnavas. The Gaura Ganodesha Deepika 119 states that Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya was an incarnation of Brihaspati, the learned scholar from the celestial planets. Gopinath Acharya, who belonged to a respectable Brahman family, was also an inhabitant of Navadvip and a constant companion of the Lord. He was the husband of Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya's sister. In the Gaura Ganudesh Deepika 178, it is described that he was formerly the Gopi named Ratnavali. According to the opinion of others, he was an incarnation of Brahma. Verse 131. Kashi Mishra Pradyumna Mishra Raya Bhavananda Yanhara Milane Prabhu Paila Ananda. In the list of devotees at Jagannath Puri, which begins with Paramananda Puri, Swarup Damodar, Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya and Gopinath Acharya, Kashi Mishra was the 5th, Pradyumna Mishra the 6th, and Bhavananda Rai the 7th. Lord Chaitanya took great pleasure in meeting with them. Purport: in Jagannath Puri, Lord Chaitanya lived at the house of Kashi Mishra, who was the priest of the king. Later, this house was inherited by Vakreshwar Pandit and then by his disciple Gopal Guru Goswami, who established the deity of Radhakant there. The Gora Ganudesh Deepika 193 states that Kashi Mishra was formerly Kubja in Mathura. Pradyumna Mishra, an inhabitant of Orissa, was a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Pradyumna Mishra was born of a Brahmin family and Ramananda Rai of a non-Brahmin family. Yet Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised Pradyumna Mishra to take instruction from Ramananda Rai. This incident is described in the Ante Lila chapter 5. Bhavananda Rai was the father of Sri Ramananda Rai. His residence was in Ala Nath Brahmagiri, which is about 12 miles west of Jagannath Puri. By caste, he belonged to the Karan family of Orissa, whose members were sometimes known as Kayasts and sometimes as Shudras. His son Ramananda Rai was the governor of Madras under the control of King Pratap Rudra of Jagannath Puri. Verse 132, Alingana Kari Tanre Balila Vachan Tumi Pandu Pancha Pandav Tomar Nandana. Embracing Rai Bhavananda, the Lord declared to him, You formally appeared as Pandu, and your 5 sons appeared as the Pandavas. Verse 133, Ramananda Rai Pattanayaka Gopinath Kalanidhi Sudhanidhi Nayak Vaninath. The 5 sons of Bhavananda Rai were Ramananda Rai, Pattanayak Gopinath, Kalanidhi, Sudhanidhi, and Nayak Vaninath. Verse 134, E Panchaputra Tumar Mora Priya Patra Ramananda Sah Mora Deha Bheda Matra. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Bhavananda Rai, Your 5 sons are all my dear devotees. Ramananda Rai and I are one, although our bodies are different. Purport. The Gora Garudesha Deepika 120-24 states that Ramananda Rai was formerly Arjun. He is also considered to have been an incarnation of the Gopi Lalita, although in the opinion of others he was an incarnation of Vishakha Devi. He was a most confidential devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Although I am a sannyasi, my mind is sometimes perturbed when I see a woman. But Ramananda Rai is greater than me, for he is always undisturbed even when he touches a woman. Only Ramananda Rai was endowed with the prerogative to touch a woman in this way. No one should imitate him. Unfortunately, there are rascals who imitate the activities of Ramananda Rai. We need not discuss them further. In Lord Chaitanya's final pastime, Ramananda Rai and Swarup Damodar always engaged in reciting suitable verses from Srimad Bhagavatam and other books to pacify the Lord's ecstatic feelings of separation from Krishna. When Lord Chaitanya went to southern India, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya advised him to meet Ramananda Rai, declaring that there was no devotee as advanced in understanding the conjugal love of Krishna and the gopis. While touring South India, Sri Chaitanya met Ramananda Rai by the bank of the Godavari, and in their long discourses, the Lord took the position of a student and Ramananda Rai instructed him. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu concluded these discourses by saying, My dear Ramananda Rai, both you and I are madmen, and therefore we met intimately on an equal level. Lord Chaitanya advised Ramananda Rai to resign from his government post and come back to Jagannath Puri to live with him. Although Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu refused to see Maharaj Pratap Rudra because he was a king, Ramananda Rai, by a Vaishnav scheme, arranged a meeting between the Lord and the king. This is described in the Madhya Lila chapter 12, verses 41 to 57. Sri Ramananda Rai was present during the water sports of the Lord after the Rath Yatra festival. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu considered Sri Ramananda Rai and Sri Sanatana Goswami to be equal in their renunciation, for although Sri Ramananda Rai was a Grihastha engaged in government service, and Sri Sanatan Goswami was in the renounced order of complete detachment from material activities. They were both servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead who kept Krishna in the center of their activities. Sri Ramananda Rai was one of the 3.5 personalities with whom Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu discussed the most confidential topics of Krishna consciousness. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised Padyam Mishra to learn the science of Krishna from Sri Ramananda Rai, as Subala always assisted Krishna in his dealing with Radharani and Krishna lila. So Ramananda Rai assisted Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his feelings of separation from Krishna. Sri Ramananda Rai was the author of the Gopal Vallabh Natak. Verses 135 and 136. Prataprudra Raja R. Odhara Krishnananda Paramananda Mahapatra Odhara Shivananda Bhagwan Acharya Brahmanandayaka Bharati Sri Shikhi Mahiti R. Murari Mahiti. Translation. King Prataprudra of Odisha, the Odiya devotees Krishnananda and Shivananda and Paramananda Mahapatra, Bhagwan Acharya, Brahmananda Bharati, Sri Shikhi Mahiti and Murari Mahiti constantly associated with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu while he resided in Jagannath Puri. Purport. Prataprudra Maharaj, who belonged to the dynasty of the Ganga kings and whose capital was in Cuttack, was the emperor of Odisha and a great devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was by the arrangement of Ramananda Rai and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that he was able to personally serve Lord Chaitanya. In the Gaura Ganodesha Deepika 118, it is said that King Indradyumna, who established the temple of Jagannath thousands of years ago, later took birth again in his own family as Maharaj Prataprudra during the time of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Maharaj Prataprudra was as powerful as King Indra. The drama named Chaitanya Chandrodaya was written under his direction. In the Chaitanya Bhagavat Antakhanda, chapter 5, Paramananda Mahapatra is described as follows. Paramananda Mahapatra was among the devotees who took birth in Orissa and accepted Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as their only asset. In the ecstasy of conjugal love, he always thought of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Bhagwan Acharya, a very learned scholar, was formerly an inhabitant of Halisahara, but he left everything to live with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri. His relationship with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was friendly, like that of a cowherd boy. He was always friendly to Sarup Goswami, but he was staunchly devoted to the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He sometimes invited Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his house. Bhagwan Acharya was very liberal and simple. His father Satanand Khan was completely materialistic, and his younger brother Gopal Bhattacharya was a staunch Mayavadi philosopher who had studied very elaborately. When his brother came to Jagannath Puri, Bhagwan Acharya wanted to hear from him about Mayavadi philosophy, but Swarup Damodar forbade him to do so. And there the matter stopped. Once a friend of Bhagwan Acharya's from Bengal wanted to recite a drama that he had written that was against the principles of devotional service, and although Bhagwan Acharya wanted to recite this drama before Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Swarup Damodar, the Lord's secretary, did not allow him to do so. Later, Swarup Damodar pointed out the drama's many mistakes and its disagreements with the conclusion of devotional service, and the author became aware of his faults in his writings and then surrendered to Swarup Damodar, begging his mercy. This is described in the Antilila chapter 5 verses 91 to 158. In the Gaura Ganodesha Deepika 189, it is said that Shikhi Mahiti was formerly an assistant of Srimati Radharani named Ragalekha. His sister Madhavi was also an assistant of Srimati Radharani. She was named Kalakeli. Shikhi Mahiti, Madhavi and their brother Murari Mahiti were all unalloyed devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who could not forget him for a moment of their lives. There is a book in the Odia language called Chaitanya Charit Mahakavya, in which there are many narrations about Shiki Mahiti. One narration concerns his seeing an ecstatic dream. Shiki Mahiti, always engaged in serving the Lord in his mind. One night, while he was rendering such service, he fell asleep, and while he was asleep, his brother and sister came to awaken him. At that time, he was in full ecstasy because he was having a wonderful dream that Lord Chaitanya, while visiting the temple of Jagannath, was entering and again coming out of the body of Jagannath and looking at the Jagannath deity. Thus, as soon as he awakened, he embraced his brother and sister and informed them, "My dear brother and sister, I have had a wonderful dream that I shall now explain to you. The activities of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the son of Mother Shachi, are certainly most wonderful. I saw that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, while visiting the temple of Jagannath, was entering the body of Jagannath and again coming out of his body. I'm still seeing the same dream. Do you think I have become deranged? I'm still seeing the same dream, and the most wonderful thing is that as soon as I come near Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he embraced me with his long arms." As Shiki Mahiti spoke to his brother and sister in this way, his voice faltered and there were tears in his eyes as the brothers and sister went to the temple of Jagannath, and there they saw Lord Chaitanya in the Jagmohan Kirtan hall looking at the beauty of Sri Jagannath deity, just as in Shiki Mahiti's dream. The Lord was so magnanimous that he immediately embraced Shiki Mahiti, exclaiming, "You are the elder brother of Murari." Being thus embraced, Shiki Mahiti felt ecstatic transcendental bliss. Thus he and his brother and sister always engaged in rendering service to the Lord. Murari Mahiti, the younger brother of Shiki Mahiti, is described in the Madhya Lila chapter 10, verse 44. Verse 137, Madhavi Devi Shiki Mahitira Bhagini Shri Radhar Dasi Madhye Yandra Nam Gani. Madhavi Devi, the 17th of the prominent devotees, was the younger sister of Shiki Mahiti. She is considered to have formerly been a maidservant of Srimati Radharani. Purport in the Antalila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 2, verses 104 to 106. There is a description of Madhavi Devi. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu considered her one of the maidservants of Srimati Radharani. Within this world, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had 3.5 very confidential devotees. The three were Sarup Goswami, Shri Ramananda Rai, and Shiki Mahiti. And Shiki Mahiti's sister, Madhavi Devi, being a woman, was considered the half. Thus it is known that Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had 3.5 confidential devotees. Verse 138, Ishwara Purira Shishya Brahmachari Kashishwara Shri Govinda Nam Tanra Priya Anuchara. Brahmachari Kashishwar was a disciple of Ishwar Puri, and Shri Govinda was another of his dear disciples. Purport: Govinda was the personal servant of Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In the Gaura Ganodesha Deepika 137, it is stated that the servants formerly named Bringar and Bhangur in Vrindavan became Kashishwar and Govinda in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. Govinda always engaged in the service of the Lord, even at greater risk. So all the associates who were present in Krishna Lila in Vrindavan, they also appeared when Krishna came in the mood of Srimati Radharani as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All the associates appeared there as well in the Chaitanya Lila. Verse 139, Tanra Siddhi Kale Donhe Tanra Ajna Pana Lila Chale Prabhu Sthane Milila Asya. Translation: in the list of prominent devotees at Nilachal Jagannath Puri, Kashishwar was the 18th and Govinda the 19th. They both came to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Jagannath Puri, being thus ordered by Ishwar Puri at the time of his passing away. Verse 140, Gurura Sambandhe Manya Kaila Dunha Kare Tanra Ajna Mani Seva Dilena Dunhare. Translation: both Kashishwar and Govinda were god brothers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and thus the Lord duly honored them as soon as they arrived. But because Ishwar Puri had ordered them to give Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personal service, the Lord accepted their service. Verse 141 Anga Seva Govindere Dilena Ishwara Jagannath Dekhite Jalena Age Kashishwar. Translation: Govinda cared for the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whereas Kashishwar went in front of the Lord when he went to see Jagannath in the temple. Verse 142 Aparsha Yay Goshani Manushya Gahane Manushya Theli Patha Kare Kashi Balwane. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to the temple of Jagannath, Kashishwar, being very strong, cleared the crowds aside with his hands so that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could pass untouched. Verse 143 Ramai Nandai Donhe Prabhura Kinkara Govinder Sange Seva Kare Nirantara. Ramaya Nandarai, the 20th and 21st among the important devotees in Jagannath Puri, always assisted Govinda 24 hours a day in rendering service to the Lord. Verse 144 Vaisha Ghada Jaladine Bharena Ramai Govinda Ajnai Seva Karena Nandai. Every day Ramai filled 22 big water pots where as Nandai personally assisted Govinda. Purport: in the Gaura Ganadesh Deepika 139, it is stated that the two servants who formerly supplied milk and water to Lord Krishna became Ramai and Nandai in the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. 145 verse Krishna Das Naam Shuddha Kulina Brahman Yare Sange Laya Kaila Dakshina Gamana. The 22nd devotee Krishnadas was born of a pure and respectable Brahman family. While touring southern India, Lord Chaitanya took Krishnadas with him. Purport: Krishnadas is described in the Madhya Lila, chapter 7 and 9. He went to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to carry out his water pot. In the Malabar state, members of the Bhattari cult tried to captivate Krishnadas by supplying a woman to seduce him, but although Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saved him from being harmed, when they returned to Jagannath Puri, he ordered that Krishnadas remain separate from him, for the Lord was never favorably disposed toward an associate who was attracted by a woman. Thus, Krishnadas lost the personal association of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Verse 146 Balabhadra Bhattacharya Bhakti Adhikari Mathura Gamane Prabhura Yenho Brahmachari. As a bona fide devotee, Balabhadra Bhattacharya, the 23rd principal associate, acted as the Brahmachari of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he toured Mathura. Purport: Balabhadra Bhattacharya acted as a Brahmachari, a personal assistant of a sannyasi. A sannyasi is never supposed to cook. Generally, a sannyasi takes prasadam at the house of the Grihastha, and the Brahmachari helps in this connection. A sannyasi is supposed to be spiritual master and the brahmachari his disciple. Balabhadra Bhattacharya acted as a brahmachari for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when the Lord toured Mathura and Vrindavan. Verse 147 Bada Haridas or Chota Haridas Dui Kirtaniya Rahe Mahaprabhura Pas. Bada Haridas and Chota Haridas, the 24th and 25th devotees in Nilachal, were very good singers who always accompanied Lord Chaitanya. Purport: Chota Haridas was later banished from the company of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as stated in the Antilila chapter 2. Verse 148 Ram Bhadracharya R. Udhara Simheshwar Tapan Acharya R. Raghu Nilambar. Among the devotees who lived with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Jagannath Puri, Ram Bhadracharya was the 26th, Simheshwara 27th, Tapan Acharya 28th, Raghunath Bhattacharya and 29th, and Nilambar the 30th. Verse 149, Singha Bhatta Kama Bhatta Dantura Shivananda Gaude Purva Bhritya Prabhura Priya Kamalananda. Singha Bhatta was the 31st, Kama Bhatta was 32nd, Shivananda 33rd, and Kamalananda 34th. They were all formerly served by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Bengal, but later these servants left Bengal to live with the Lord in Jagannath Puri. Verse 150, Achyutanand Advait Acharya Tanaya Nilachal Rahe Prabhura Charana Ashray. Achyutanand, the 35th devotee, was the son of Advaita Acharya. He also lived with the Lord Chaitanya, taking shelter of his lotus feet at Jagannath Puri. There is a statement about Achyutananda in chapter 12, verse 13 of the Adi Lila. Verse 151, Nirloma Ganga Das Ar Vishnu Das Say Sabera Prabhu Sange Nilachale Vas. Nirloma Gangadas and Vishnudas are 36 and 37 branches among the devotees who lived at Jagannath Puri as servants of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So verses 152 to 154, they are all together. Varanasi Madhe Prabhura Bhakta Tina Jana Chandrasekhara Vaidya Ar Mishra Tapana Raghunath Bhattacharya Mishrera Manandana Prabhu Yabe Kashi Aila Dekhi Vrindavan Chandrasekhar Grihe Kaila Dui Masa Vas Tapan Mishrera Ghare Bhiksha Dui Mas. The prominent devotees at Varanasi were the physician Chandrasekhar Tapan Mishra and Raghunath Bhattacharya, Tapan Mishra's son. When Lord came to Varanasi after seeing Vrindavan for 2 whole months, he lived in the residence of Chandrasekhar Vaidya and accepted prasadam at the house of Tapan Mishra. Purport: when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Bengal, Tapan Mishra approached him to discuss spiritual advancement. Thus he was favoured by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and received Harinam initiation. After that, the order of the Lord, Tapan Mishra resided in Varanasi. So Lord ordered him to stay there. And when Lord Chaitanya visited Varanasi, he would accept prasadam at the home of Tapan Mishra. Verse 155, Raghunath Pale Kaila Prabhura Sevana Uchishta Marjan Ar Pada Samvahana. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stayed at the house of Tapan Mishra, Raghunath Bhatta, who was then a boy, washed his dishes and massaged his legs. Verse 156, Bada Haila Nilachale Gela Prabhura Sthane Ashtamas Rahila Bhiksha Dena Kon Dine. When Raghunath Bhatta grew up to be a young man, he visited the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Jagannath Puri and stayed there for 8 months. Sometimes he offered prasadam to the Lord. Verse 157, Prabhura Achna Pana Vrindavere Aila Asya Shri Rupa Gosanira Nikate Rahila. Later, by the order of Lord Chaitanya, Raghunath went to Vrindavan and remained there under the shelter of Shri Rupa Goswami. So we'll continue our reading from here onwards next time. Thank you for joining. Hare Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.